My name is Madison Carter. I'm 40 years old, a detective with the Chicago Police Department. Though standing in the burnished hallway of the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, you wouldn't have guessed it. That day, I looked every bit the ordinary daughter, old Levi's, a plain grey sweatshirt, hair pulled into a loose bun, sneakers with the soles worn flat by miles of city sidewalks. The only thing that betrayed my nerves was the police badge in my pocket, heavy as a stone and twice as hidden. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unkind, turning my skin almost blue. Dad's voice, on the other hand, cut through the air like a knife at a Sunday roast, cheerful and commanding. He held court at the nurse's station, laughter ringing out for everyone to hear, as if he wasn't here for my mom's third heart attack in 2 years. Madison, he called, as if inviting me into his show. She's just my unemployed daughter who dreams a little too big. He grinned at Dr. White, who was in the middle of explaining Mom's condition, but Dad barely glanced at him. Instead, he looked over the rim of his designer glasses at the gathered staff, enjoying the way they all laughed along, nervous, polite, not quite sure where to look. I kept my arms crossed, trying to shrink into the beige walls. I'd lived this moment so many times it felt almost rehearsed. Dad, big shot owner of 3 luxury car dealerships from Miami to Tampa, always made sure everyone remembered who called the shots in the Carter family. He employed 200 people, donated to local campaigns, had his photo in the business section of the Miami Herald more times than I could count. And still, to him, I was playing dress-up. She likes to tell people she's a police officer, he said, eyes twinkling with a familiar mix of amusement and something sharper. At her age. Imagine. I was 40, but with Dad, I always felt much younger, smaller, somehow, and less important. The nurses smiled awkwardly, as if unsure whether to laugh or change the subject. Dr. White cleared his throat, murmured something about blood thinners and EKGs, and I caught his glance in my direction, another family member lost in denial. He had no idea. For years, I'd tried to share my real life with my family, not boasting, just simple updates. Every time I came home, Ashley, my younger sister, would ask, "How's work, Maddie?" But if I mentioned a night shift, or court testimony, or a shooting on the South Side, Dad would cut in with news of a new dealership expansion or a political fundraiser he was hosting. At family dinners, my brother Eric, a lawyer in Atlanta, would be introduced as the attorney, Ashley, now a cardiac surgeon in Dallas, as the doctor. And me? Still working with the police, somewhere. If anyone asked for details, Dad would change the subject, or worse, chuckle and say, "E.O., Maddie's always had an overactive imagination. She likes to pretend." He'd done it so many times I'd lost count. The worst part was watching people believe him. The only time he ever showed me off was when I was a kid. When I was 8, he took me to his Miami showroom and proudly told his staff, "This is my little chief. She organizes all her toys by rank." Back then, he called me his future leader. Somewhere between elementary school and adulthood, he'd stopped believing it. The elevator pinged, and a pair of nurses wheeled my mom out, unconscious, pale as milk. Dad's expression changed instantly. Now he was the devoted husband, asking questions, shaking hands, making decisions. But to everyone else, I was invisible. Just the daughter in the corner. The one with too much time and too few responsibilities. Mom was going to need 24-hour care. We started a rotation, Dad during the day, Eric handling insurance paperwork, Ashley discussing medical options. I took the night shifts, sleeping in hospital chairs, catching naps when I could, always ready to bolt back to Chicago if a case broke open or my captain called. But whenever staff needed a volunteer for something inconvenient, late-night pharmacy runs, paperwork, meal deliveries, Dad would say, "A Madison's always available, she's not busy." If I tried to say I had work obligations, he'd wave me off. "Her police stuff isn't that important." That stung more than I cared to admit. My days were spent managing multi-agency task forces, running surveillance, testifying in federal court, and writing reports that went straight to the chief of police. I led raids, negotiated with SWAT, debriefed victims, and sometimes, quietly, sat with families whose lives had been turned upside down by crime. My badge wasn't a toy, and my job wasn't a game. But standing in that hospital, under my father's shadow, all of that felt so far away. It was as if none of it mattered. I wondered if he'd ever truly seen me at all. That first week blurred into the next. Mom's condition stabilized, but Dad's attitude didn't change. He held meetings with doctors like he was running a boardroom, never missing a chance to remind everyone how successful he was, how much he'd sacrificed for the family. In those moments, I wished, just once, he'd ask about my life, the real one, not the one he pretended I didn't have. Instead, I watched as my brother and sister slid back into their childhood roles. Eric, the problem solver, Ashley, the caretaker. And me, the dreamer, the unreliable one, the daughter who hadn't grown up. Night after night, as I sat by my mother's bedside, I found myself staring at the flickering lights outside, wondering when my family stopped believing in me, and if they ever truly had. Hospitals have a way of erasing time. Days bleed into nights, the rhythm measured only by the beeping of monitors, the shuffle of nurses' shoes, and the soft sighs of the sick and their families. During those endless hours, I watched my family fall into its old patterns, the Carter legacy playing out on sterile linoleum floors. Dad turned every conversation into an opportunity to share his business wisdom. "You know, if you want to get ahead, you have to take control," he told a resident one afternoon, barely glancing at me in the chair beside him. "Madison still thinks life is about adventure. She'll figure it out someday." The young doctor nodded politely, not knowing that the only adventure I craved was a single honest conversation with my father. Ashley managed schedules with the same efficiency she brought to the OR. Color-coded charts, medication reminders, consultations with specialists. She was always moving, always fixing, always subtly reminding me that I was the extra piece on this puzzle. "Don't worry about the discharge papers, Maddie. I'll handle it." Eric, ever the negotiator, wrangled with insurance and coordinated rehab options, speaking a language of policies and loopholes that left the rest of us spinning. And me? I slipped into the role they assigned me. I showed up, did the late-night runs to Walgreens, sat by Mom's side and quietly made sure the nurses checked her vitals on time. When they needed coffee or dinner, I fetched it. When the air in the room turned thick with tension, I changed the subject or stepped into the hallway, pretending to make a call. Every time I tried to mention my work, a difficult case, a new task force, an award I'd received, it was brushed aside with a "that's nice, honey," or a distracted nod. I stopped bringing it up. One night, around 2 a.m., as I sat with Mom while she slept, her fingers cold and fragile in mine, I let myself remember what I'd left behind in Chicago. I missed the controlled chaos of the precinct, the sense of purpose that came with every shift. I missed the team, the detectives who treated me as an equal, who knew what I was capable of. There, I was Lieutenant Carter. Here, I was just the middle child, the invisible one. My phone vibrated, a message from my captain. Need your input on that West Loop case. Updates by noon if you can swing it. I typed a quick reply, careful not to wake Mom. I knew if Dad saw me on my phone, he'd make another crack about playing games or online shopping. To him, my phone was a sign of distraction, not duty. At breakfast, Dad looked up from his Wall Street Journal and said, Madison, you ever think about going back to school? Maybe get your business degree, join the family company? He meant it as advice, but it felt like another dismissal. Ashley laughed. You know she likes her adventures, Dad. She wouldn't survive a day in an office. Eric chimed in. I could get you an interview at my firm if you ever want to try something different. There's more to life than chasing bad guys. They meant well, I told myself. But the ache in my chest said otherwise. I wanted to shout, I'm not lost. I'm not a child. I'm a leader, a detective, someone who matters. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I smiled, poured another cup of coffee, and changed the subject to the Florida weather. The worst part wasn't their lack of interest, it was their certainty that they understood me. Their assumption that my job was a phase, a temporary adventure I'd grow out of, like Ashley's brief interest in painting or Eric's college band days. But this wasn't a phase. It was my life. It was the thing that made me feel alive and strong and seen. But in this house, and in this hospital, I was a ghost. Unseen. Unheard. That evening, I stepped outside for some air. The Florida sunset painted the sky in gold and pink, mocking the grayness I felt inside. I called my partner, Detective Zoe Ramirez, back in Chicago. She answered on the first ring. How's your mom? Zoe asked gently. Stable, for now. How's the case? Not the same without you, Carter. You know the new guy thinks you're some sort of legend? Everyone misses your coffee. I smiled for the first time all week. Tell him not to drink it. Too much caffeine, not enough sugar. You holding up? I hesitated. Depends. Here, I'm just extra. Like I'm not even real. Zoe paused. You're real to us. We're saving you a spot. I hung up feeling lighter, but also more alone. I couldn't help wondering if, in my family's eyes, I'd ever be more than the girl who took the road less traveled, and if that would ever be enough. The days blurred together, each one punctuated by Mom's fragile breaths and the ever-present hum of medical equipment. By the second week, the hospital had become our strange, temporary home. Dad had commandeered the doctor's lounge, turning it into his private office, complete with conference calls and take-out containers. He barked instructions at staff and family alike, as if running his car dealerships from this fluorescent-lit command post. Eric had brought his laptop and legal pads, often huddled in a corner poring over insurance policies or reviewing contracts. Ashley bounced between calls with her colleagues in Dallas and updating Mom's chart, obsessively tracking every milligram of medication and every minor fluctuation in heart rate. I watched them both, a mixture of pride and frustration twisting inside me. When it came time to schedule Mom's physical therapy, Dad made a show of sighing heavily. Well, Madison's always available. She doesn't have a real job to get back to, he announced, not bothering to look my way. My jaw clenched. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. What was the point? Anything I said would be met with the same dismissive smile, the one that said, "Sure, honey." Sure. Ashley looked over the clipboard. Are you sure you don't mind, Maddie? We just thought, since you have more free time. I wanted to scream. My free time was an illusion, a fiction my family clung to because the truth was too far outside their understanding. I'll take the evening shifts, I replied quietly. Just let me know what she needs. That night, sitting beside Mom's bed while she slept, I tried to finish a report for the West Loop homicide. My laptop glowed in the darkness, the cursor blinking accusingly. Every time I got into a rhythm, a nurse would poke her head in, or Dad would call to check on Mom, or Ashley would text about prescriptions. It felt like being pulled in 100 directions, none of them leading home. Sometime after midnight, Mom stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, cloudy with fatigue. Maddie? Her voice was a whisper, barely audible over the machines. I'm here, Mom. Everything's okay. Just rest. She squeezed my hand. You're a good girl, Madison. Always looking out for everyone. A lump formed in my throat. If only she knew the world I carried outside this room. The next morning, Eric announced that he had to fly back to Atlanta for a deposition. Ashley needed to return to Dallas for a critical surgery. Dad would hold down the fort here at the hospital during the day. And me? You'll stay with your mother at night, Dad decreed. That's the least you can do. I nodded, biting back a retort. What he didn't know was that every night I was fielding encrypted emails from Chicago, running risk assessments for upcoming raids, and working remotely with my team to keep a multi-million-dollar drug bust on track. I was sleeping in fits and starts, heart racing with every ping from my secure phone. At home, I was Lieutenant Carter. In this hospital, I was the help. When the hospital's social worker stopped by to discuss Mom's rehab plan, she turned to me and asked about my employment, presumably for insurance paperwork. Oh, she's between jobs, Dad answered for me. Just taking some time to figure things out. I stared at him in disbelief. Actually, I started, my badge await in my pocket. She's not working right now, Dad repeated, smiling at the social worker as if daring me to contradict him. A flush of anger surged through me. I work for the city of Chicago, I said, keeping my voice even. Oh, doing what? The social worker asked, interest piqued. Dad interjected, she helps out in the community. Volunteers a lot. I bit my tongue until it hurt. I was a decorated police lieutenant. I'd led rescue operations, busted crime rings, testified in high-profile cases, and negotiated hostage situations. But in this building, I was just a volunteer. Just a daughter. Just nothing. That afternoon, I sat in the hospital courtyard, staring at the Florida sky. A message came in from Zoe. Need your advice. New info on the Ramos case. Call me if you can. I dialed her, grateful for the lifeline. How are things? Zoe asked, her voice a soft Chicago rasp. About as good as they can be, I said. I think my family believes I'm unemployed. She laughed, a warm sound. You want me to mail them your commendations? Maybe a copy of your last press release? I snorted. Wouldn't matter. Dad would say it's Photoshop. We worked through the new case details, my mind clearing as I slipped into detective mode. For 15 minutes, I was myself again, respected, valued, necessary. After we hung up, I sat quietly, letting the world slow down. The ache in my chest was dull, familiar. I wondered how many more times I'd have to earn my family's respect, and if it would ever be enough. That night, as I returned to Mom's room, I caught my reflection in the window. Not a child, not a misfit, not a burden. Just Madison Carter, police officer, daughter, survivor. And maybe, just maybe, that would have to be enough for now. 3 weeks into Mom's hospital stay, the Carter family routine was locked in. Dad running his miniature empire from the waiting room, Ashley emailing medical charts between rounds, Eric gone back to Atlanta but texting in every so often with legally advice. My role? Night shifts, paperwork, and errands. Never mind that my phone buzzed constantly with coded messages from the Chicago PD, and my inbox overflowed with updates on investigations waiting for my review. One evening, as the sun set over Jacksonville, Dad called a family meeting in the hospital cafeteria. He straightened his tie as if about to address a press conference, then gestured for me and Ashley to sit. I spoke with Dr. White. Dad announced. Your mother will need another week, maybe 2, of round-the-clock care. Eric's flying in for the weekend, but after that, he trailed off meaningfully. Ashley closed her laptop with a sigh. I can maybe rearrange 2 days, but after Tuesday I have patients booked back-to-back. Dad turned to me, expectant. You have the most flexible schedule, Madison. You'll handle the overnight shifts. We'll need you every night until Mom's home. A dull, cold pressure squeezed my chest. I have obligations in Chicago, Dad. I can't just. He cut me off, waving his hand. Army reserves or whatever it is. Not as important as family. I forced a breath, counted to 3. I'm not reserves, Dad. I'm. Ashley interrupted. It's just temporary, Maddie. We all have to pitch in. For a moment, I wanted to shout at them both. Remind them of the years I'd spent working double shifts, the sacrifices I'd made, the criminals I'd helped put behind bars. Remind them that my obligations weren't imaginary. But I swallowed my protest. This was how it always went. My work was a hobby, my schedule, an inconvenience. That night, while Mom slept, I drafted an email to my captain explaining the situation. Family medical emergency. Will work remotely and be on call. Available for case consults and reports. Will return to Chicago ASAP. Zoe replied within minutes. Do what you need to do, Carter. We've got your back. Let me know if you need a cover story. I smiled despite myself. It felt good to be trusted, if only from 1,000 miles away. The next day, Dad asked me to pick up his dry cleaning and collect paperwork from the front desk. When the nurse thanked me, Dad grinned. Madison's always available. She's got plenty of free time. Later, he cornered me by the elevators. You know, when are you going to settle down, Maddie? Maybe find a real job, buy a house, give me some grandkids? I met his gaze, tired and defiant. Dad, I love what I do. I'm not settling for anything less. He shrugged, as if I'd confessed to collecting stamps. You always were the stubborn one. Just want you to have something steady. Something that matters. His words stung more than I wanted to admit. I wanted to scream, I matter. The pressure inside me built, slow and relentless. At night, I lay awake in the recliner next to Mom, unable to sleep, haunted by the feeling that my real life, the one I'd built with blood, sweat, and grit, was slipping through my fingers. Each day in Florida chipped away at my confidence, erasing a little more of Lieutenant Carter and leaving behind only Madison, the daughter who wasn't enough. One evening, as I quietly filled out Mom's medication log, a young police officer from the Jacksonville PD stopped by the nurse's station. He was delivering documents for hospital security and glanced in my direction. Our eyes met, and for a split second, I felt seen. He nodded, noticing my badge chain peeking from under my sweater. "UCPD?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded, relief flickering in my chest. "Detective Carter." "On leave." He smiled. "Hang in there, Lieutenant. Family stuff is always harder than the job." It was a simple thing, but the acknowledgement, however brief, meant everything. For a moment, I remembered who I was. That night, as Mom drifted in and out of sleep, she squeezed my hand. "You always take care of everyone, Maddie. Even when they don't see it." I blinked back tears. "I'm trying, Mom." "You always try." She smiled, eyes half closed. "That's why I know you'll be okay, even if your dad never understands." I sat there long after she fell asleep, letting her words echo in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, it was enough to know I was doing right by her, even if the rest of the world refused to see it. As dawn crept over the city, painting the hospital walls pink and gold, I took a deep breath and texted Zoe. "Ready for anything. Give me what you've got." For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. The hospital air felt thicker with every passing day, heavy with unspoken words and all the things my family refused to see. By week 4, I was operating on muscle memory, making rounds with the nurses, ordering meals for Mom, answering Dad's endless texts about logistics, and handling my Chicago workload through sleepless nights and secret calls. I was holding the seams together, but no one seemed to notice the strain, least of all my father. One Tuesday evening, the tension finally snapped. It was one of those sticky Florida nights when the AC couldn't keep up, and the air tasted like rain. Mom's condition had worsened that afternoon. She was delirious from medication, weak and barely conscious. Dad was pacing by the window, barking updates into his phone, his frustration building like a thunderstorm. Ashley hovered at the bedside, adjusting for lines, reading every number off the monitor as if she could will Mom back to health by sheer determination. I was perched on the edge of Mom's bed, her cold hand in mine, when my phone vibrated. I glanced down, a priority message from Chicago PD Operations. "LT Carter, urgent, need your status on the Jackson case. New developments. Deputy Chief wants a video briefing by 7 a.m. Chicago time." My heart pounded. I had less than 12 hours to prep. If I didn't respond, my team would be scrambling blind. I started mentally rearranging everything. I'd need to duck out of the hospital by 4 a.m., find a private space for the call, and pray the Wi-Fi held. This was the kind of high-stakes operation where a single misstep could put people's lives in danger. Lost in thought, I didn't notice Dad watching me until his voice shattered the quiet. "For God's sake, Madison," he snapped, loud enough that even the next room turned. "Your mother is dying and you're glued to your phone?" I flinched. "Dad, it's..." He cut me off, voice sharp. "What? Checking Instagram? Texting your friends? Madison, your mother needs you here, not lost in whatever fantasy world you've created." Ashley chimed in. He's right. Maddie. This is more important than whatever hobby you're working on right now. I froze, anger and shame burning through me. This isn't a game, I said quietly. Eric, home from Atlanta and perched in the corner with medical paperwork, didn't look up. Let it go, Maddie. Dad's right. Their words landed like blows. A hobby. A fantasy. Let it go. I stood abruptly, chest tight. You have no idea what I do. No idea at all. Ashley shot me a look, tired and dismissive. We're all stressed, Maddie. Please, can we just focus on Mom? I bit back a bitter laugh. Sure. Whatever you say. As I turned to leave, Mom's hand tightened on mine, just for a second, a ghost of a grip, but enough to make me pause. Dad shook his head, disappointment carved deep into his features. I don't know what happened to you, he muttered. Used to be my little leader. Now I don't even recognize you. Something inside me broke then. I leaned down, kissed Mom's forehead, and walked to the door. Where are you going? Dad barked. I stopped, fighting to keep my voice steady. Tomorrow, I'll be leading a briefing with the Deputy Chief of Police, trying to keep officers alive in a city that never sleeps. Next week, I'm back in Chicago handling a major operation. That's not a fantasy, Dad. That's my job. He scoffed. Right, Madison. And I'm having dinner with the governor. Eric smirked. Ashley rolled her eyes, and even the nurse shuffled awkwardly. I hesitated in the doorway, every muscle tense. Believe what you want, I said quietly. But someday, you'll see. The drive home that night felt endless, headlights flickering in the humid darkness as I tried to hold back tears. I thought of every late night, every missed holiday, every time I'd chosen duty over comfort. I remembered the first time Dad took me to his dealership, calling me his future boss, proud of my confidence. When had that pride turned to disappointment? When had I become a stranger in my own family? By the time I reached my borrowed apartment, exhaustion had settled into my bones. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and lost myself in my work, analyzing case files, writing briefing notes, doing the job that was never just a job to me. For hours, I let the rhythm of investigation drown out everything else, the click of keys, the hum of logic, the steady certainty that here, at least, I knew who I was. At 3:45 a.m., I packed up, changed into business casual clothes, and drove back to the hospital, ready to brief Chicago PD from the only quiet space I could find, a storage closet beside the cardiac wing. I logged onto the encrypted call, face washed in the bluish light of the screen, and presented my analysis with precision and confidence. On the other end, the deputy chief nodded. Excellent work, Carter. We'll move based on your recommendations. For the first time in days, I felt alive. Respected. Real. I closed my laptop, tucked my badge into my pocket, and leaned back against the cool tile wall, letting the sense of purpose linger. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. A new day. Another shift. Another chance to prove, to myself, if not to them, that I was more than just the sum of their expectations. The morning after my late-night briefing with the Chicago PD, I felt more tired than ever but oddly lighter, as if something heavy had been pulled away, even just for an hour. I sat with Mom as the city woke, sipping bitter hospital coffee, reviewing police reports on my phone. For a while, I was alone with my thoughts. For once, nobody questioned my time. Around noon, Eric breezed in with breakfast and a stack of legal pads, glancing at me but not really seeing me. Ashley followed, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, her white coat slung over her shoulder like a shield. Dad, as always, was already in the thick of things, talking loudly to the cardiologist in the hallway, making it clear who was boss. The day dragged on, filled with medical jargon, insurance calls, and the sound of televisions humming in the background. I tried to focus on the files coming in from Chicago, but every time I read a line, I'd get interrupted. When I finally had a free moment, I wandered outside to the courtyard for a breath of humid Florida air. My phone buzzed. Eric again, texting from inside the building. Ashley says you left Mom alone. Dad's looking for you. I gritted my teeth, shoved the phone back in my pocket. Even when I wasn't there, I was somehow still in the way. Back inside, I found Dad near the elevator, arms crossed, face stormy. You just disappear now? Is that what your little fantasy job taught you? How to run away when things get hard? It took every ounce of restraint not to explode. I just needed 5 minutes to myself. Ashley arrived, a worried frown on her face. We all need a break, Dad. Let's not start. Dad ignored her. You're the only one without real commitments, Madison. That's why you're here. I closed my eyes for a moment, then met his gaze. If you think I have no commitments, you've never bothered to ask. A silence fell. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Confusion? Doubt? He shook his head and walked away. The tension lasted all afternoon, thick and suffocating. No one spoke to me except in orders or corrections. I tried to remind myself that I was needed elsewhere, my real work, my team, my city. But here, in this family, I was always the afterthought. That evening, while I was sitting in the hallway, working on a case summary, something unexpected happened. The hospital intercom clicked on. Detective Carter, please come to the main desk. Detective Carter. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. But then a nurse hurried over. They're asking for you, Madison. There are officers here to see you. My heart pounded. Had something happened in Chicago? I hurried to the lobby, trying to look calm. There, in full uniform, stood 2 Jacksonville police officers and a third man, a sharply dressed special agent from the FBI. The officer stepped forward. Lieutenant Carter? We were sent by your department in Chicago. They said you missed a security check-in this morning. We just need confirmation you're safe. Everyone at the reception desk, and my family, who'd come running at the commotion, stared at me. I flashed my badge. Sorry for the trouble. I had to step out to help with a family emergency. You can confirm with my captain in Chicago. The special agent nodded, then turned to Dad. You must be Mr. Carter. Just so you know, your daughter is an integral part of a major ongoing operation. Her absence caused some concern. Dad's face went blank. Eric stepped forward, stammering. Wait, you're actually a lieutenant? Not just. The FBI agent gave a small, formal smile. Lieutenant Carter coordinates operations with federal law enforcement on cases that span multiple states. She's one of the best we work with. The silence in that lobby was total. Even Ashley looked stunned. I thanked the officers, promised to check in more regularly, and watched as they left, heads nodding respectfully in my direction. When I turned back, Dad looked at me as if he was seeing a stranger. I didn't realize, he managed, voice hoarse. Ashley's mouth hung open. Maddie, you never told us. I shook my head, exhausted and trembling. I tried, Ash. For years. Eric was the first to recover. He gave a weak laugh, half embarrassed. Well, looks like you really are the hero, little sister. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired, so tired that I wanted to disappear into the night and never return. But for the first time, I saw something shift in their faces, a new recognition, maybe even respect. That night, Dad knocked quietly on Mom's hospital room door. Madison, can I come in? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He sat beside me, his bravado gone. I'm sorry I never listened. I should have believed in you. I just wanted you close. Didn't want to lose my little girl. My anger faded, replaced by a strange, deep sadness. You didn't lose me, Dad. You just never saw me. He covered my hand with his. I see you now. For a while, we sat in silence, just a daughter and her father, rebuilding what years of pride and misunderstanding had broken down. The days after the visit from the police and FBI agent felt different, quieter, as if my family was suddenly aware that the world was larger than the narrow stories they'd always told about me. Dad no longer barked orders. Eric and Ashley watched me, sometimes with new questions hovering on their lips. There was a space at the table now, a silence where the jokes and dismissals used to be. But with recognition came awkwardness. Ashley tried to ask about my work, but her words always trailed off. Eric mentioned a case he saw on the news and asked if it was one of mine, as if searching for a way to connect. Dad seemed unsure, hovering near me in the hospital room but never quite meeting my eyes. I realized that it wasn't just pride that had made them blind. It was fear, too. Fear that I'd become someone they couldn't protect or control, someone who belonged to a world beyond their reach. I spent more time with Mom. She was regaining her strength, her voice a little steadier, her eyes a little clearer each day. One evening, as dusk colored the window and the hospital sounds quieted, she took my hand in hers. I'm sorry we never understood, as she whispered. Your father always wanted to keep you safe. I just wanted you to be happy. I squeezed her hand, blinking back tears. You don't have to apologize, Mom. I just needed you to believe in me. She smiled, tired but warm. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. That night, I lay awake on the fold-out cot, listening to the faint beeps and hums of the machines. My mind wandered to my earliest dreams, chasing justice through crowded streets, helping people, making a difference. I remembered the thrill of earning my detective badge, the late nights, the hard-won victories, and the camaraderie of my team. I missed them deeply, but for the first time in weeks, I felt myself starting to heal. 2 days later, Mom was discharged. The whole family gathered as she was wheeled out. Ashley fussed over her medications, Eric handled the insurance paperwork, and Dad loaded the car with blankets and snacks. For the first time, Dad turned to me, hesitation in his eyes. You're coming back to the house, right, Maddie? We could use your help. I nodded, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. Of course, Dad. I'll be there. At home, the mood was lighter. The old family routines returned, but with something softer at their edges. Over takeout Chinese, Ashley finally asked, "So, what's it like being a detective? Is it really like the TV shows?" I grinned. Not even close. Less car chases, more paperwork. But sometimes it's everything you hope it'll be. Eric leaned in, suddenly animated. "What about the biggest case you ever solved?" I laughed. "You'll have to narrow it down. There's the one with the art thief, the missing senator's son, the arson ring." Their faces lit up, hungry for stories. For the first time, I was allowed to talk, not just as the oddball sibling, but as someone with real experiences, someone whose life mattered. Dad watched from his corner, listening. His gaze was steady, almost proud. That night, as I cleaned up the kitchen, he lingered at the doorway. "I called your captain today," he admitted quietly. "Wanted to make sure you were really, well, everything they said you were." He told me about your commendations, your leadership awards, the operations you ran. Said you were one of the best he's ever seen. My throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." He smiled, sheepish. "Guess I just needed to hear it from someone else. I'm sorry, Madison, for not seeing you sooner." I reached out and hugged him, really hugged him. He patted my back, awkward but sincere. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. And for the first time, I believed him. That night, I pulled my uniform out of my travel bag, crisp navy blue, with my silver lieutenant's badge gleaming on the chest. I laid it out carefully, thinking about the journey it had taken to earn every stripe and pin. In the quiet of my childhood room, I felt a wave of peace. For years, I'd tried to force my family to see me, to value what I'd become. But real respect, I realized, wasn't about shouting your worth. It was about living it, quietly and fiercely, even when no one noticed. Now, as I prepared to return to Chicago, I knew something in our family had changed for good. And so had I. My last morning in Florida was almost peaceful. The humid air felt softer, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows as I packed my bags. Dad insisted on making coffee, Ashley scribbled last-minute care instructions for Mom, and Eric hovered near the door with my flight itinerary pulled up on his phone. For the first time in years, no one joked about me running away or made light of my career. Instead, the house buzzed with a new kind of energy, curiosity, a little awkwardness, but something like respect as well. Dad loaded my bags into the trunk, lingering beside the car. "You know," he said, squinting at the driveway, "when you left for the police academy, I thought you'd come home in 6 months. Couldn't picture my little girl in uniform." I smiled, memories flooding back. "I couldn't picture myself anywhere else, Dad." He nodded, voice gruff. "Guess I just didn't want to admit how much you'd grown up. Or how proud I was." Mom leaned out the door, waving. Her cheeks were still pale, but her eyes were brighter than I'd seen in weeks. "Call me when you land, sweetheart. And text when you get to your apartment. Promise?" "Promise, Mom." I hugged her gently, squeezed Ashley's hand, and gave Eric a smile as he handed me my travel mug. It felt like a new beginning, all of us uncertain but hopeful. The flight home was quiet, the clouds below me like a fresh sheet of paper. I stared out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. The anger and sadness, the late-night hospital vigils, The argument that had nearly broken me, the unexpected moment of recognition when the officers came looking for me. For so long, I'd believed that my family's approval was the only thing that mattered. Now I realized what I'd been searching for was already within me, written in every act of service, every hour spent protecting strangers, every hard-won victory in the streets of my city. Chicago greeted me with a chill wind and the restless pulse of traffic. As soon as I walked into the precinct, the familiar chaos swept me up, phones ringing, officers swapping stories, detectives hunched over maps and evidence boards. Zoe was waiting at my desk, arms crossed, a grin spreading across her face. "You survived Florida, Carter?" "Just barely," I said, dropping my bag. "How's the city?" She laughed. "Same as always. We missed you." I pulled out my badge, pinned it to my chest, and took a long breath. Home. In the days that followed, I dove back into the work. Late nights on stakeouts, coffee-fueled strategy meetings, the satisfaction of piecing together clues and chasing leads. Every now and then, I'd glance at my phone and see a text from Dad. "A proud of you, kiddo. Tell the team your old man says hi, E." Or a picture from Ashley with Mom smiling in the background, or a legal joke from Eric that made me groan out loud. It was different now. The wall between us had cracked, and in its place was something uncertain but real, a bridge built from small moments. Cautious questions, shared stories. A few weeks later, a ceremony was held for officers who distinguished themselves in the line of duty. I stood in a sea of blue uniforms, listening to the chief list off names and accomplishments. When mine was called, I walked across the stage, the applause echoing in my ears, the badge on my chest gleaming under the lights. As I accepted the medal, I looked into the crowd and spotted 3 familiar faces: Dad, Ashley, and Eric, dressed in their best, waving from the second row. Even Mom had made the trip, her cane clutched tightly, her smile proud and teary. After the ceremony, Dad wrapped me in a hug so fierce I almost lost my breath. "Never thought I'd see the day," he whispered. "You're something special, Madison." Ashley took my hand. "I wish I'd listened sooner." Eric grinned. "Next time you chase a car thief, let me know. I'll do the paperwork." We laughed together, a sound that felt like a door opening, letting in light. For years, I'd been running, toward justice, toward respect, toward a place where I belonged. I realized now that belonging isn't just about being seen. It's about standing your ground, holding on to your truth, even when the world tells you you're wrong. That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window overlooking the city lights. My badge rested on the table, next to a photo of Mom and Dad, and a new text from Ashley. "A proud of you, Maddie. Come home for Thanksgiving? E." For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I had built a life worth living, whether or not anyone noticed. But now, finally, the people I loved most were starting to see me too.